in heaven above and on the earth below. There is no other. And this morning, we want to worship and give praise to our God. Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. Oh, you never failed. I know the night won't last. Your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again. Your promise still stands. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never fail. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You never failed me yet. Never failed me yet. Oh, oh, there is love. You have been so good. I've seen you move Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence. You've never failed me yet. Never failed me yet. And I never will forget. You never failed me yet.
Well, I love nothing more than a good mystery. In fact, I've often thought that if I wasn't a pastor, I might actually make a good detective. Sometimes I imagine what it would be like to walk into a crime scene, looking for evidence, tracing the bullets or the blood splatter, trying to figure out what really happened here. Well, in the book of Colossians, we find ourselves walking into a true mystery. Now, some of you who have been faithfully reading a chapter a day are saying, hold it, we're not in Colossians. We're just finishing the book of Numbers, and this weekend we're on day 641 of a 1,000-day journey. We're entering the book of Deuteronomy. Why are you talking about the book of Colossians? Well, the answer is simple. For the next month, our messages aren't going to be aligned with our daily Bible reading. Instead, we're launching into a standalone series we're calling The Yarn. We're still going to be reading a chapter a day, and I'm still going to be blogging on that chapter every single day. But on the weekends, we're going to take a detour. And I'll explain why in a minute, but first, back to the mystery of Colossians. If you need to name this mystery, it's called the Colossian heresy. And the reason it's a mystery is because nobody actually knows what the Colossian heresy was. So in order to try and figure out the Colossian heresy, the theologians and Bible scholars examined Paul's polemic. What's that? His polemic? His polemic is a strong written or verbal confrontation. So in the book of Colossians, Paul fires a bunch of strong polemic bullets, but he doesn't actually name or show what the target is. So we're left to figure out by tracing those bullets, and we begin to understand what the target and the problem that was facing the church of Colossae was. It would sort of be like me saying, I can't stand them in my house. They scratch up the floors, they poop on the carpets, and they want to go outside at the most inconvenient times. Now, I never actually named what the problem or the target was, but from my strong polemic, you can work backwards and figure it out. I was talking about dogs. So when we trace Paul's strong polemic backwards, from the many verses in Colossians that rail against the Colossian heresy that are threatening the church, theologians have a pretty good idea of what the Colossian heresy might have been. You see, in Paul's letter, in his strong polemic, investigators detect a strong influence of astrology. The stars were thought to be angels, and there was literally angel worship going on, as well as the belief that the circumstances of our lives are controlled by heavenly bodies moving through the sky. But that is only the first thread. Investigators have also detected the strong presence of Hellenized Judaism. Now, what is that? Well, it was this hyper-ceremonialism and mysticism. This was not the Orthodox Judaism of Jerusalem, but rather a mutated Judaism. heavily influenced by Greek philosophy and religion with an emphasis on underworld deities and warring spiritual forces. Then there was Gnosticism, which is the claim that some people have secret knowledge about spiritual things. Paul counters the influence of Gnosticism in Colossians 2:8 by saying, "Don't let anyone capture you with empty philosophies and high-sounding nonsense that come from human thinking and from spiritual powers of this world rather than from Christ." And then there was strong influence of some mystery religion that had at its core degrading and depreciation of Christ. And finally, there was the worship of Jesus himself, the genuine, authentic worship of Jesus. But all these religious threads all converged to form the Colossian heresy. In other words, the Colossian heresy was a tangled mess and hodgepodge of customized religion and religious thought that was threatening the church. The Colossian Christians had basically been introduced and possibly pressured by all sorts of religious options, and instead of standing strong against them, they decided to take a bit of each one and create their own form of Christianity. And this hodgepodge of belief, called syncretism, was threatening to destroy the unity and the impact and the relationships of the church. So writing to the church of Colossae, Paul says, "I want you to know how much I've agonized for you, and for the church of Laodicea, and for many other believers who have never met me personally. I want them to be encouraged and knit together by strong ties of love. I want them to have complete confidence that they understand God's mysterious plan." See what he's doing right there? The mysterious plan. He's challenging the Gnosticism. This mysterious plan, which is Christ himself. In him lies hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. There's another polemic bullet right there. I'm telling you this so no one will deceive you with well-crafted arguments. For though I am far away from you, my heart is with you, and I rejoice.
Hold on, be strong. Remember where your help comes from. Oh, 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 Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in his blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come. Don't let your heart be troubled. Hold your head up high, don't fear no evil. Fix your eyes on this one truth. God is madly in love with you. So take courage, hold on, be strong. Remember where our help comes from. Oh, 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 the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, oh you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Swing wide, all you heavens, let the praise go up as the walls come down. All creation, everything with breath, repeat the sound. All his children, clean hands, pure hearts, good grace, good God. His name is Jesus. Jesus, our redemption, our salvation is in his blood. Jesus, light of heaven, friend forever, his kingdom come.
Well, what an encouraging song for us to sing this morning. Our redemption and our salvation is in Jesus' blood. Whether we're singing that or whether we're listening to that this morning, be encouraged by that truth. BKD, Ben, Kel, and Doug, you guys do an unbelievable job. Thanks for leading us this morning. Well, part of my job here at Riverwood is to run our social media. You see, we have an Instagram and a Facebook page, both of which we've been trying to be more active and more engaging on. With COVID happening, a lot of us aren't comfortable gathering in big groups and even small groups. But at the same time, the word of the Lord doesn't change. God's word doesn't change. It's still so important for us to stay involved in community. So we believe as a church that our Facebook and our Instagram are actually really cool ways that we can stay involved as a church, that we can communicate with each other. So this last weekend, we had some fun with it. You see, we did a moccasin contest, and if you didn't tune in last week, don't worry about it. I'll catch up to date right now. All you had to do was take a picture of your feet, your family's feet, or you and your spouse, or you and your kids, in your favorite slippers, or in your socks, or your bare feet, with the service in the background, or you could just take a picture of your regular feet with nothing in the back and send it in to Riverwood CC, our Instagram and our Facebook pages, or over email. And you see every picture that you sent in was a ballot for the entry, for the draw. Now, behind me, I have all of your ballots and entries inside of that blue water bottle. Now, in the hockey world, a water bottle popper is like really good. Like it's good style. You know, if you pop the water bottle, if you pop the goalie's water bottle, it's pretty awesome. So today, what I'm gonna attempt to do is pop that water bottle, have all of your ballots come out of the water bottle, and then proceed to pick one random ballot off of the ice, and that will be the winner of the his and hers custom-made moccasins. Are you ready? Let's do this. Now, let's go pick one up. The winner of the his and hers moccasin contest is Tim Burton. Tim Burton is the winner of our moccasin contest challenge. So Tim, we'll be contacting you. Hey, if you want to step out in faith today and you want to give, we definitely encourage you to do so. You can do it on our Riverwood app, or you can do it on our website, riverwood.cc, or you can drop off a check at the fire hall where we'd be happy to help you there. Thank you for your giving. Thank you for your generosity. We know that in this time, there's so much financial instability and unknowns. And so despite that, Riverwood just continues to step up, and we thank you for that. Well, let's head back to church now, and let's dig in as we hear the second part of our message.
Well, I want to take this moment to welcome everybody at Couch Church and all of those that are at House Church. We were doing some stats and looking on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We got people literally all across Canada, through the States and around the world. And it's pretty cool that different people are checking in. And so wherever you are, we want to say hi to you. And so great to have you here. Congrats to Tim Burton and whoever gets that extra pair of moccasins. And we're looking forward to getting those custom moccasins made for you. Also want to take this moment just to acknowledge a prayer request that we have as a church, and that is for Pastor Peter in Eswatini.
We've been in contact with them, and we just found out that Pastor Peter was in the hospital for the last couple weeks. He's been ill with difficulties breathing, and today we just received word that it is COVID positive, that he has COVID. And of course, you can imagine with some of the healthcare challenges and even some of the financial challenges that go along with being in another country and being ill. So just be in prayer for Peter. Precious is being tested as well, and so be in prayer for their family, and of course for the care points and all of the kids that we look after. So we're into part 2 here, and we're on a mission to discover and become better at 10 practical ways to stay connected during COVID. Now, 10 practical ways to live out Paul's challenge in Colossians 2:2 is what we're really wanting to bore into, to be knit together with strong ties of love and what he calls a tapestry of love. And the first way, coming out of Hebrews 10:25, is to, number one, make a weekly appointment with your churchies. Now, you can call them whatever you want to call them, but just make a weekly appointment. Instead of waiting for your pastors and church leaders to design some sort of campaign or program or just waiting for COVID to be over, take the initiative purposefully. Commit to joining with 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 other people to check in on each other, to process the weekly message and the application questions that we're posting every week, and to pray for each other, especially, what can I pray for? But here is the second way to live out Colossians 2:2. Number 2, refuse to have a puny faith. Instead, supersize it. Now, if you are anything like me, you're thinking, what in the world does that mean? I mean, that was my first reaction when I read the words supersize beside the word faith. You see, I was doing some research on relationships and psychology and the psychology of connecting. And I came across this psychologist from California whose name is Dr. Brad Strawn, who wrote a few books and articles on the brain and relationships and the church. And he said this. He said, ultimately, we don't think and learn solely with our brains or bodies. We literally think in better or more powerful ways in connection with elements and others outside our bodies. We supersize our human capacities. This was such new language for me that I had to check it out in the Bible. So my first question that I asked is there anything in the Bible that supports this? Well, I couldn't find anything that directly said that our own capacity is supersized, but I did come across 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 12, and it says this, and may the Lord make your love for one another and for all people grow and overflow just as our love for you overflows. And then 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 5 goes on to say this, dear brothers and sisters, we can't help but thank God for you because your faith is flourishing and your love for one another is growing. It would seem that God's desire is that our love for each other in the context of faith is, in fact, supersized. May your love for one another not become puny and isolated, but may it grow and overflow. And when you love one another, your faith is going to flourish, and it's going to supersize and grow and expand. Now, there certainly seems to be a strong sense in the Bible that God wants our love and our relationships and our faith to be supersized and ever expanding and flourishing. But Dr. Strawn's claims seem to go beyond this. He seemed to be saying that our human capacity and our mental processes and our human aptitude is actually supersized based on our ability to have healthy and growing relationships. So the second question I asked after reading this phrase was, I wonder if Dr. Strawn would take a few minutes to explain this claim himself. And here was my answer.
Well, Dr. Brad Strawn, thank you so much for joining us today. Where are we finding you?
I am in Pasadena, California, home of the Tournament of Roses parade. Some of you may have watched on television.
All right. So a little bit of context. Who are you? I know you just published a book. Congratulations on that. You're a PhD in psychology. What are your credentials, or why should we be listening to your psychological stuff?
It's always a great question these days. So I'm a professor of clinical psychology at Fuller Theological Seminary in Pasadena, California. and we have a complete APA accredited graduate school of psychology. So we grant doctorates in clinical psychology as well as marriage and family therapy degrees. I have a particularly unique position. I sit in the chair for the integration of psychology and theology. So what I get to think about all day long is, what do these two disciplines have to do with one another, and how can they both inform and make the other one better?
Yeah,
So I teach.
I was listening to one of your talks, and I was surprised at the deep theological love for the church, yet being connected with psychology, and I found that very fascinating. So that's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah, perfect.
We're just launching a series called The Yarn. It's based on Colossians 2:2, which is about being knit together in a tapestry of love and the strong ties of love. And yet everything in our culture with this pandemic is threatening our connectivity. So let's talk about the threats. First of all, what are the threats of COVID and the distancing and the masks and everything doing to our connections together?
Yeah. Well, I'm fond of saying that humans don't just have relationships, but relationships make us human. And what we believe now, and I wholeheartedly believe, is that humans are completely and totally embodied creatures, embedded in the world of other bodies. We're not just heads on sticks. We don't just have thoughts. We think with our whole bodies. And what's so important about that is that we learn as small infants and developing children and even into adulthood that connectedness is essential. It's essential for our physical health, for our emotional health, our well-being, all of those kinds of things. We actually enhance our way of being human by being human with other humans. And so in some sense, anything that threatens to create that disembodied connection between people can do all sorts of damage to us, including even impacting our physical health. We know it's impacting a lot of people's emotional health these days: isolation, loneliness, those sorts of things. Whether it's a pandemic or whether it's, an older adult experiencing isolation in a nursing home, we have to think long and hard about how we deal with this kind of isolation.
In the context of churches, we're used to getting together, to handshaking, to hugging, to having coffee, to worshiping together, to learning together, then more handshake, coffee, and hugging afterward. We're missing all of that, and I can imagine there's some people are saying, "Well, I'll just wait till it gets back to normal, and then we can gather again." There's actual benefit to connecting, and that we're missing, right? So, what do we do in the meantime? What do we do while we can't get together physically?
So, while I don't love Zoom like we're doing right now, it is in fact better than nothing. And so there are ways in which, again, we're enhancing our connectivity through things like computers and telephones and that sort of thing. And I really encourage people to use them. While we need to use them, use them. Don't just say, well, I'm not going to reach out to anyone until I can actually do it face to face. This is better than nothing. It's not the same sort of, when humans touch one another, oxytocin is an endorphin that's released in the body. It's the bonding emotion. It's the love hormone, if you will. And that's really important, to get back to the hugging and the touching and the shaking hands and the laying on of hands as we pray for one another. But in the meantime, it really is important to find ways to connect via media, as well as, and again, I don't know everything that's going on in Canada, but here we do have some capacity to be face to face as long as we're social distancing, as long as we're wearing masks. I mean, we've even learned how to give socially appropriate hugs, right, with masks on. And I wouldn't underestimate that. Otherwise, again, we're missing really unique opportunities, particularly, I think, in the church, for imitating one another. Humans are wired to imitate. And so when we're not together and we don't see each other and we're not particularly serving together, we miss the opportunity to actually become better followers of Christ by watching and imitating people who are further along the journey than we are. When we're kind of heads on sticks, as we are even in this video right here, we're not living life together. And I think that's one of the big things that we miss. We're just not having dinner. We're not serving together. We're not worshiping together.
So what is the danger of not getting this right? Like, this is all brand new to all of us, and we go through this. And again, rather than just saying, well, I'm going to sit in my basement watching Netflix for the next 6 months, if that's getting it wrong, and reaching out and doing some really strategic things is getting it right, what's the danger of not getting it right to ourselves and to our health?
Right. Well, again, I mean, there's actually some evidence that our cardiovascular health is better when we actually have physical connection with one another. We know that physical connection reduces our stress. We know that higher levels of stress deplete the immune system. And it doesn't seem like, in one sense you go, well, that can't be that big of a deal, but it's a cumulative effect, right? It's over time. And now we're like into this, 6 months or something like this, half a year. It's unbelievable. That I haven't, I and you, I haven't been able to be around some of my closest friends, and we've been doing small groups online, and I'm so thankful for that, but it's just not quite the same. And we all feel it. Our level of disclosure decreases, our level of intimacy decreases. Now, I want to be careful because I have friends and other people who say, we're having amazing experiences online. We're crying together, we're praying together. And I know that's true as well. And I think those people are very deliberate. They know the limitations of what they're facing, but they go into it with real high expectations. And so there's a kind of, again, balancing in there. My big concern, Todd, though, is that when it's all said and done, let's say our government say, okay, come back and worship together. My fear is a lot of people are going to say, well, I really like going to church in my pajamas. And I really like not having to hit the traffic in the Los Angeles area where I live. And I think that's where we're really going to get hurt, is because we're going to miss out again on a kind of discipleship that's embodied and embedded in the lives of other people, where we can serve together and exhibit Christ to the world.
Now, let me ask you, so Paul says, my encouragement to you is that you would be knit together in these strong ties of love, or in a tapestry of love. From a psychological perspective, how do we practically do that? How do we really knit ourselves together during this pandemic?
Again, we are inextricably related beings. If we don't have connection with others, infants die when they don't have enough connection with human persons, skin to skin kind of contact. And we can have a certain